Today I saw a tweet about Akbar the Great. This tweet really made my day. I really had to laugh, and it was funny how Akbar the Great died. Akbar the Great would treacherously assassinate Hindu nobles by feeding them poisoned pan. He kept identical medicine and poison pills in his pan box to secretly slip poison. One day, Akbar mistakenly ate the poison pill instead of medicine and died. Karma served his last pan. Thank you, Savitri, for this amazing story. When I read this story, I had to think about the video of David Wood. David Wood explained in his video how the prophet of Akbar the Great died. They both died of poison.
Interestingly, the Quran tells us how Allah would have killed Muhammad. We find Allah's MO, his preferred method of executing prophets, in Surah 69, verses 44 through 46. According to the Quran, if Muhammad were to invent a false revelation, if he were to make up verses of the Quran, Allah would kill him by severing his aorta. The aorta is the large artery that comes out of the left ventricle of your heart. Some Muslim sources call it the life artery. Let's look at four translations of verses 44 through 46, along with a commentary, so we can get a clear idea of what the passage is saying. The Haleli Khan translation reads, "And if he, Muhammad, had forged a false saying concerning us, we surely should have seized him by his right hand, or with power and might, and then certainly should have cut off his life artery." And in parentheses, the translators add, aorta. The Pickthall translation declares, "And if he had invented false sayings concerning us, we assuredly had taken him by the right hand and then severed his life artery." Daud's translation reads, "Had he invented lies concerning us, we would have seized him by the right hand and severed his heart's vein." M.H. Shakir renders these verses, "And if he had fabricated against us some of the sayings, we would certainly have seized him by the right hand, then we would certainly have cut off his aorta." Just so we're clear on the meaning, and no one accuses me of misrepresenting the passage, let me read one of the greatest Muslim commentaries on these verses. This is Tafsir Jalalain. "And had he, namely the Prophet, fabricated any lies against us by communicating from us that which we have not said, we would have assuredly seized him. We would have exacted vengeance against him as punishment by the right hand, by our strength and power. Then we would have assuredly severed his life artery, the aorta of the heart, a vein that connects with it, and which, if severed, results in that person's death." So if Muhammad had been a false prophet and a liar and a deceiver, we know how Allah would have killed him. Allah would have cut his aorta. Let's turn to the Muslim sources so we can put together our profile. According to Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and other texts, Muhammad was poisoned by a Jewish woman. Sahih al-Bukhari 26:17. "A Jewess brought a poisoned cooked sheep for the Prophet, who ate from it. She was brought to the Prophet and was asked, 'Shall we kill her?' He said, 'No.' Anas added, 'I continued to see the effect of the poison on the palate of the mouth of Allah's Messenger.' People could see the effect of the poison in Muhammad's mouth. The poison apparently disfigured his palate, making his mouth look strange." Sahih Muslim 54:30. "A Jewess came to Allah's Messenger with poisoned mutton, and he took of what had been brought to him. When the effects of this poison were felt by him, he called for her and asked her about that. Whereupon she said, 'I had determined to kill you.' Thereupon he said, 'Allah will never give you the power to do it.'" Muhammad tells this woman, Allah will never allow you to kill me. I guess Muhammad didn't know Allah very well, because the poison ultimately did kill him. In case you're wondering why this woman wanted to poison Muhammad, she tells us in Ibn Sa'd. The apostle of Allah sent for Zaynab bint al-Harith, that's the woman who poisoned him, and said to her, "What induced you to do what you have done?" She replied, "You have done to my people what you have done. You have killed my father, my uncle, and my husband, so I said to myself, if you are a prophet, the foreleg will inform you. And others have said, if you are a king, we will get rid of you." The woman poisoned Muhammad because he slaughtered her family. Sahih al-Bukhari, 4428. The Prophet, in his ailment in which he died, used to say, "O Aisha, I still feel the pain caused by the food I ate at Khaybar, and at this time I feel as if my aorta is being cut from that poison." Sunan Abu Dawud 4498. A Jewess presented Muhammad at Khaybar a roasted sheep which she had poisoned. The apostle of Allah ate of it, and the people also ate. He then said, "Lift your hands from eating, for it has informed me that it is poisoned." Bishr bin al-Bara bin Marur al-Ansari died. So he, the Prophet, sent for the Jewess and said to her, "What motivated you to do the work you have done?" She said, "If you were a prophet, it would not harm you, but if you were a king, I would rid the people of you." The apostle of Allah then ordered regarding her, and she was killed. He then said about the pain of which he died, "I continued to feel pain from the morsel which I had eaten at Khaybar. This is the time when it has cut off my aorta." This is the time when it has cut off my aorta. In Ibn Sa'd we read, the apostle of Allah took the foreleg, a piece of which he put into his mouth. Bishr ibn al-Bara took another bone and put it into his mouth. When the apostle of Allah ate one morsel of it, Bishr ate his, and other people also ate from it. Then the apostle of Allah said, "Hold back your hands, because this foreleg has informed me that it is poisoned." Thereupon Bishr said, "By him who hath made you great, I discovered it from the morsel I took. Nothing prevented me from spitting it out, but the idea that I did not like to make your food unrelishing. When you had eaten what was in your mouth, I did not like to save my life after yours, and I also thought you would not have eaten it if there was something wrong." Bishr did not rise from his seat, but his color changed to that of a green cloth. In Sunan Abu Dawud, Muhammad even described his pain to Bishr's mother. Bishr said to the Prophet, during the sickness of which he died, "What do you think about your illness, apostle of Allah? I do not think about the illness of my son except the poisoned sheep of which he had eaten with you at Khaybar." The Prophet said, "And I do not think about my illness except that. This is the time when it cut off my aorta." There's that aorta again. Tabari, page 124, the Messenger of God said during the illness from which he died, the mother of Bishr bin al-Bara had come to visit him. Bishr, at this very moment I feel my aorta being severed because of the food I ate with your son at Khaybar. Okay, Muhammad, we get the point about the severed aorta. According to Aisha, Muhammad was in total agony before his death. Sunan ibn Majah, 1622, Aisha said, "I never saw anyone suffer more pain than the Messenger of Allah." In the end, Muhammad couldn't even walk on his own. His followers had to drag him around. Sahih al-Bukhari 2588, Aisha said, "When the Prophet became sick and his condition became serious, he requested his wives to allow him to be treated in my house, and they allowed him. He came out leaning on two men while his feet were dragging on the ground." Now, since the Quran says that if Muhammad were a false prophet, Allah would sever his aorta, and Muhammad eventually admitted that he could feel his aorta being severed, you might think we have a pretty good reason to reject Muhammad and his religion. But you're wrong. If you look more closely, you'll see that we have at least 10 good reasons to reject Muhammad here. First, think about Muhammad's argument in the Quran. If I'm a false prophet, Allah will cut my aorta. People who make silly claims like this usually aren't prophets. I am a prophet. If I'm not, may God strike me with lightning. Ah, no lightning. This proves I'm a prophet. When someone uses that kind of reasoning, chances are he's a false prophet. But that's exactly how Muhammad argues in Surah 69. My friends, there are thousands of ways to die. Do you really think it's a coincidence that Muhammad died in exactly the way the Quran said he would die if he's a deceiver and a false prophet? Looks like divine judgment to me.